When the register came up short, all eyes turned to her, and suddenly, she was the thief. On a cold, rain-soaked night in Detroit, Lila Brooks stood behind a flickering counter with nothing left but $7 in her pocket. Money meant for her mother's medicine. When a desperate stranger asked for exactly that amount, everyone told her to walk away. But something in his eyes made her pause and choose differently. What happened after that moment didn't just cost her everything. It set off a chain of events no one in that neighborhood could have imagined. The rain had been falling for hours, the kind that didn't pour hard but never seemed to stop, soaking through jackets, shoes, and patients alike. It painted the streets of Detroit in a dull shimmer, turning neon lights into blurry streaks that bled across the pavement. At the edge of a worn-down block, where flickering street lamps struggled to stay alive, an old gas station stood like it had been forgotten by time. Inside, the air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and motor oil. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow over the chipped counter where Lila Brooks stood, her shoulders slightly hunched, her hands tucked under her arms for warmth. Her fingers trembled, not just from the cold that seeped through the glass doors every time they opened, but from something deeper. Hunger. The kind that made your stomach feel hollow and tight at the same time. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Not really. A stale piece of bread she had split in half, saving the other portion for later, though later never seemed to come the way she planned. Outside, a car engine coughed and died near pump 4. Lila glanced up instinctively, her tired eyes narrowing as she watched through the rain-streaked glass. A beat-up sedan sat crooked beside the pump, its headlights dim, one flickering weakly before going out altogether. The driver's door opened slowly, and a man stepped out. He didn't look like much. His coat was long but worn, the fabric darkened by rain. His shoes were scuffed, his hair unkempt, and his posture carried a heaviness that made him seem older than he probably was. He stood there for a second, as if gathering himself, before walking toward the entrance. The bell above the door gave a tired chime as he stepped inside. Every head in the station turned. 2 truckers near the coffee machine paused mid-conversation. A young couple by the snack aisle glanced over, then quickly looked away, whispering to each other. Even Mr. Darnell, the night manager, who rarely paid attention to anything beyond his ledger, lifted his eyes just long enough to assess the man and dismiss him. Lila didn't say anything at first. She just watched. The man approached the counter slowly, water dripping from the edge of his coat onto the tiled floor. When he finally looked up, their eyes met. There was something in his gaze. It wasn't desperation, not exactly, and it wasn't pride either. It was tired honesty, like someone who had run out of ways to pretend. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice rough but steady. "I hate to ask, but I'm stuck out there. I just need enough to get to the next exit. $7 should do it." The number hung in the air. $7. Behind him, one of the truckers let out a low chuckle. "Man, you picked the wrong place," he muttered. "Ain't nobody handing out free gas tonight." The other laughed louder. "Especially not her," he added, nodding toward Lila. "She probably got less than you do." The words weren't new. Lila had heard variations of them her whole life. People assuming, guessing, deciding who she was worth before she even spoke. Mr. Darnell didn't bother hiding his irritation. "We don't do charity here," he said flatly, not even looking directly at the man. "You got money, you pay. You don't, you move along." The man nodded once, like he had expected that answer. Still, he didn't leave. Not yet. His eyes flickered back to Lila, and for a brief moment, everything else in the room faded. Lila felt it, that quiet pull, like something inside her had been nudged awake. She didn't know why. She didn't know what she was supposed to see, but she couldn't look away. $7. Her hand slowly moved to her pocket. She already knew what was inside. She had counted it twice before her shift started. Once before she left the apartment. Once more when she realized she might need to stop by the pharmacy on her way home. $7. Exactly. Her mother's medicine wasn't optional. It wasn't something she could delay again. Not tonight. "Don't do it," the woman from the snack aisle whispered just loud enough to be heard. "He's probably lying." "Yeah," the trucker added. "Seen it 100 times. People like him, they just move on to the next sucker. People like him. People like her." Lila swallowed hard. The man didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there, quiet, waiting, not expecting, just waiting. Rain tapped softly against the glass behind him, steady and cold. $7. Her fingers tightened around the bills in her pocket. She thought about her mother lying in that dim apartment, breathing slower each night. She thought about the empty kitchen, the unpaid bills, the way the world seemed to press down harder on people who already had nothing left to give. And then she thought about something else. A memory. Her mother's voice, soft but certain from years ago. "If you ever have a chance to help someone, Lila, you do it. Not because you have enough, but because you know what it feels like to have nothing." Lila closed her eyes for just a second. When she opened them, she reached into her pocket. The bills felt thin between her fingers as she pulled them out. $7. She placed them gently on the counter. "Pump 4, she said. The room went silent. For a split second, nobody moved. Then the truckers burst into laughter, loud and sharp, echoing off the walls. "You gotta be kidding me," one of them said, shaking his head. Mr. Darnell's expression darkened immediately. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. Lila didn't answer him. She kept her eyes on the register as she rang it in, her hands steady now, even as her heart pounded in her chest. The man looked at the money, then back at her. For the first time, something shifted in his face. Not relief. Not exactly. Gratitude. Deep and quiet, like it meant more than it should. "Thank you," he said softly. Lila nodded once. He didn't say anything else. He simply turned and walked back out into the rain. The bell chimed again as the door closed behind him. Outside, the pump clicked to life. Inside, the laughter slowly faded, replaced by murmurs, by judgment, by the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but heavy. Mr. Darnell stared at the register, then at Lila. "You better hope that comes out right," he muttered under his breath. Lila didn't respond. She just stood there, watching through the glass as the man filled his tank under the flickering light, rain falling steadily around him. She didn't know why she had done it. Not fully. All she knew was that in a world where everyone had turned their back, she hadn't. And somehow, that felt like the only choice she could live with. But as the man finished pumping gas and disappeared back into his car, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but impossible to ignore. Why had she trusted him, when no one else would? The sound of tires hissing over wet pavement faded into the distance, swallowed by the steady rhythm of the rain. Inside the station, everything returned to motion, but nothing felt the same. Lila stood still for a moment longer, her eyes fixed on the empty space where the car had been. The neon light outside flickered, buzzing faintly, casting uneven shadows across the glass. It felt colder now. "Unbelievable," Mr. Darnell muttered, flipping a page in his ledger with more force than necessary. "You just gave away store money like that? You planning to pay it back, Lila?" His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The judgment in it carried across the room. Lila lowered her gaze. "I rang it in," she said quietly. "Yeah?" he shot back. "Then where's the cash?" She didn't answer. Because they both knew. $7 didn't just come from nowhere. One of the truckers snorted, shaking his head. "Girl, you too soft for this place," he said, not even trying to hide the edge in his tone. "World's gonna eat you alive." The other added, "If it ain't already." Lila pressed her lips together and turned slightly, pretending to straighten a stack of receipts. Her hands were steady again, but something inside her wasn't. Not regret, not exactly. Just a quiet ache. The rest of the shift dragged on. Customers came and went, the bell chiming over and over, each sound blending into the next. The rain never let up. It tapped against the windows, dripped from jackets, pooled near the door where people tracked it in with muddy boots. No one spoke to her directly anymore, not unless they had to. And when they did, it was quick, cold, transactional, like she had crossed some invisible line. By the time her shift ended, the sky was still dark, the city wrapped in that gray-blue haze that came just before dawn. Lila grabbed her worn coat from the hook behind the counter and slipped it on, ignoring the way Mr. Darnell watched her. "Don't forget," he said, tapping the ledger with his pen. "We'll settle that missing cash tomorrow." Missing. The word hung heavier than it should have. Lila nodded once and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her immediately, sharp and biting, cutting through the thin fabric of her coat. She pulled it tighter around herself and started walking, her shoes splashing through shallow puddles along the cracked sidewalk. Detroit at this hour felt different, quieter, but not peaceful. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long, tired beams onto empty corners. A bus rumbled past, its windows fogged, carrying passengers who looked just as worn down as the city itself. Lila walked with her head slightly lowered, her hands tucked into her pockets, not just for warmth, but out of habit. It was how she had learned to move through the world. Small, unnoticed, safe. Because attention wasn't always kind. She passed the same buildings she always did. Boarded-up storefronts, graffiti-covered walls, a liquor store that never seemed to close. A man stood outside it, leaning against the brick, watching the street with hollow eyes. He didn't say anything to her. He didn't have to. She kept walking. By the time she reached her apartment building, the rain had slowed to a mist, clinging to the air like a memory that refused to fade. The building itself loomed ahead, old and tired, its paint peeling, its windows dim. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of damp carpet and something else, something stale. The flickering overhead light buzzed as she climbed the stairs, each step creaking under her weight. She reached the third floor, paused for a moment to catch her breath, then continued down the narrow corridor until she reached her door. Apartment 3B. She pushed it open quietly. The room was dark except for a small lamp glowing softly in the corner. The air was warmer here, but not by much. And there, on the worn-out couch that doubled as a bed, lay her mother. Angela Brooks looked smaller than she used to. The blankets were pulled up to her chest, her breathing slow and uneven, her face pale under the dim light. A glass of water sat untouched on the table beside her, along with a prescription bottle that was almost empty. Lila closed the door gently behind her. For a moment, she just stood there, watching, listening, making sure her mother was still breathing. Only then did she step forward, her movements quiet, careful not to wake her. She knelt beside the couch, brushing a loose strand of hair from her mother's face. "Hey, Mama," she whispered, even though she knew she might not hear her. "I'm home." Angela stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open just enough to see her daughter. "You're late," she murmured, her voice thin but warm. "Yeah," Lila said softly. "Busy night." It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. Her mother smiled faintly, then reached for her hand. "You eat anything?" The question hit harder than it should have. Lila hesitated, just for a second. Then she nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay." Another small lie. Angela seemed to accept it, her grip on Lila's hand loosening as her eyes began to close again. "Good," she whispered. "You gotta take care of yourself, baby." Lila swallowed. "I will." She sat there for a while, long after her mother drifted back to sleep, her hand still resting lightly in hers. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the lamp and the distant sound of traffic outside. Her stomach twisted, empty and aching, but she ignored it. Instead, her mind drifted. Back to the station, back to the man, to the way he had looked at her. Not like she was invisible, not like she was less. Just seen. Lila exhaled slowly, leaning back against the couch. She had spent her whole life being overlooked. At school, where teachers barely remembered her name. At jobs where managers assumed the worst before she even spoke. On the street, where people crossed to the other side without thinking twice. She had learned early on what the world expected from her, and how little it took to disappoint it. And still, she had given away her last $7. A quiet, bitter thought flickered through her mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was too soft. Maybe the world really did punish people like her. Her gaze shifted to the nearly empty prescription bottle on the table. Tomorrow, she would have to find a way. Another shift. Another favor. Another impossible choice. The weight of it pressed down on her chest, heavy and constant. But beneath it, there was something else, something small. A flicker. Because despite everything, despite the looks, the laughter, the warnings, she didn't regret what she had done. Not yet. Lila closed her eyes, letting her head rest back against the couch. Outside, the first hint of morning began to creep into the sky, pale and uncertain, and somewhere deep inside her, a question quietly formed. If kindness always came at a cost, how much more could she afford to lose? The question lingered in Lila's mind long after sleep should have come. But sleep didn't come easily anymore. It arrived in short, fragile pieces, broken by the sound of her mother coughing, by the hum of old pipes in the walls, by the quiet fear that tomorrow might demand more than she had left to give. Morning crept in slowly through the thin curtains, a pale gray light that did little to warm the room. Lila blinked awake, her neck stiff from where she had dozed off sitting upright beside the couch. Her mother was still asleep. For a moment, Lila just watched her, counted the rise and fall of her chest. 1, 2, 3. Still breathing. Only then did she let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She stood carefully, stretching the soreness out of her arms, and moved toward the small kitchen corner. The cabinet door creaked as she opened it, revealing what she already knew was there. Almost nothing. A can of soup, half a sleeve of crackers, and an empty space where hope used to live. Lila closed the cabinet quietly. Her stomach twisted again, sharper this time. She poured herself a glass of water instead, drinking it slowly, letting it settle the emptiness just enough to keep moving. Because she had to keep moving. That was the rule. You didn't stop. You didn't fall apart. Not when someone else depended on you. She grabbed her coat and glanced once more at her mother before heading for the door. "I'll be back soon, Mama," she whispered. Angela didn't wake. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the world still felt damp and heavy, like it hadn't fully shaken off the night. The streets glistened under the weak morning light, and the air carried that sharp, cold edge that made everything feel a little harder. Lila walked faster today, not because she was late, but because she didn't want to think. Yet her mind kept pulling her back to the same moment. $7. The way the bills had felt in her hand, the way the room had gone quiet when she placed them down, the way everyone had looked at her, like she had made the dumbest choice imaginable. Maybe she had. By the time she reached the gas station, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a faint golden glow behind the low buildings. It should have felt like a new beginning. But it didn't. Not today. The bell chimed as she stepped inside. Everything looked the same. Same flickering lights, same stained counter, same smell of cheap coffee. But the atmosphere had shifted. Heads turned again. And this time, the looks were different. Not curious, not amused. Sharp, accusing. Mr. Darnell was already behind the counter, his expression tight as he flipped through the ledger. He didn't greet her, didn't nod. He just stared. "Well," he said after a moment, tapping the page with his pen. "You want to explain this?" Lila stepped closer, her heart already starting to beat faster. She didn't need to look. She knew what he was pointing at. "The register came up short," he continued. $7. There it was again. $7. The number followed her like a shadow. "I told you," Lila said quietly. "I used my own money." Mr. Darnell let out a short laugh, one that didn't carry any humor. "That's not what the numbers say." Lila frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, leaning forward, his voice lowering, "the system shows a transaction, sure, but the cash drawer doesn't match. And I checked it myself." A cold feeling spread through her chest. "That's not possible," she said. "Isn't it?" he shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you took the money and tried to cover it up." The words hit harder than she expected. Lila blinked, her breath catching. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I didn't take anything." Behind her, someone scoffed. "Here we go," a voice muttered. Lila turned slightly, catching a glimpse of the same truckers from the night before, watching with open interest now, like this was entertainment. "I gave him my money," she said again, more firmly this time. "You saw me." Mr. Darnell shrugged. "I saw you do something. Doesn't mean I know what really happened." The ground beneath her feet felt unsteady. "That doesn't make sense," she said, her voice tightening. "Check the camera." For a split second, something flickered across his face. Then it was gone. "Camera's been acting up," he said quickly. "Didn't catch anything clear." Lila's stomach dropped. Of course it didn't. Because nothing ever worked when it needed to. "You're blaming me because the system's wrong?" she asked, disbelief creeping into her voice. "I'm blaming you because you're responsible," he replied, his tone sharp now. "You were on that register." Silence settled over the room. Heavy, uncomfortable. Lila could feel every pair of eyes on her, judging, deciding, just like always. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice low but steady. Mr. Darnell held her gaze for a long moment. Then he leaned back. "Fine," he said. "We'll sort it out. But until we do, You're off the schedule." The words landed like a punch. "What?" Lila whispered. "You heard me," he said. "I can't have someone I can't trust running my register. Trust." The irony burned. Lila swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she could feel how little they mattered. Because in this room, in this place, her word had never been enough. Mr. Darnell had already moved on, flipping another page in his ledger like the conversation was over, like she was already gone. Lila stood there for a moment longer, her chest rising and falling, her mind racing. $7. That was all it had taken. $7. To turn kindness into suspicion. $7. To make her the one everyone doubted. Slowly, she reached for her coat. No one stopped her. No one spoke. The bell chimed again as she stepped outside. This time the sound felt louder, sharper, like something breaking. The morning light hit her face, but it didn't feel warm. It felt exposing, like the whole world could see her now, not as someone who tried to help, but as someone who had failed. Lila pulled her coat tighter around herself and started walking. She didn't know where she was going yet, only that she couldn't stay there. Not after this. And as she moved down the street, past the same cracked sidewalks and silent buildings, one thought echoed louder than anything else. Had she just lost everything for $7? The question followed Lila all the way down the block, echoing in the hollow space between each step she took. The city was fully awake now. Cars rushed past, tires splashing through leftover puddles. A bus hissed as it stopped at the corner, its doors folding open with a tired sigh. People moved quickly, heads down, focused on their own lives, their own problems. No one noticed her. And somehow, that felt worse. Because just an hour ago, everyone had been looking, judging, deciding. Lila slowed as she reached the intersection, her chest tightening as the reality of what had just happened began to settle in. She had been taken off the schedule, not fired, but close enough. And in a place like that, where trust was already thin, temporary rarely stayed temporary for long. Her fingers curled inside her coat pockets. $7. That number had turned into something heavier now. Not just money. A mistake. Or at least, that's what everyone else seemed to think. She crossed the street, barely noticing the change in the light, her mind replaying every second of the morning over and over again. The ledger. Mr. Darnell's voice. The way he didn't even consider her explanation. The way no one did. By the time she reached her building, the weight of it had settled deep into her chest. Not loud, not explosive, just heavy. Like something pressing down slowly, steadily, until it became hard to breathe. Inside, the hallway felt even narrower than usual. The flickering light buzzed overhead as she climbed the stairs again, each step slower this time. Not from exhaustion, from hesitation, because she didn't know how to walk through that door and pretend everything was fine. But she had to. She always had to. When she reached apartment 3B, she paused, her hand resting lightly on the handle. Then she pushed it open. The room looked the same, quiet, still. Her mother was awake this time, propped up slightly on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The TV played softly in the background, though the volume was so low it was almost just noise. Angela turned her head when she heard the door. "You're back early," she said, her voice gentle but curious. Lila forced a small smile. "Yeah," she replied, slipping off her coat. Slow morning. It wasn't convincing. She knew that. But it was enough. Angela studied her for a moment longer, her eyes narrowing slightly. Not in suspicion, but in that quiet way mothers seem to see more than they said. "You okay?" she asked. The question hung there. Simple, direct, dangerous. Lila hesitated, just for a second. Then she nodded. "I'm fine." Another lie. But this one felt heavier than the others. Angela didn't push. She rarely did. Instead, she gave a small nod and leaned back against the couch, her energy already fading. "Come sit," she said softly. Lila walked over and sat beside her, careful not to shift the blanket too much. The couch dipped slightly under her weight, the springs creaking faintly. For a while, neither of them spoke. The TV flickered. A commercial played. Then another. Time moved, but slowly. "You remember?" Angela said after a while, her voice quieter now. "When you were little, you used to give away your lunch." Lila blinked, caught off guard. "What?" she said softly. Angela smiled faintly, her eyes still on the TV. "Every day. I'd pack it, and you'd come home hungry. Said some kid at school needed it more." Lila let out a small breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "I forgot about that." "I didn't," Angela said. There was no judgment in her tone, no disappointment, just memory. Lila looked down at her hands. "They used to make fun of me for it," she said quietly. "Said I was stupid." Angela turned her head slightly, meeting her eyes. "And what did you think?" Lila didn't answer right away, because the truth was, she still didn't know. The room fell silent again, the weight of unspoken thoughts filling the space between them. Finally, Angela reached over, placing her hand gently on top of Lila's. "You got a good heart," she said. "Don't let this world convince you that's a weakness." The words settled deep, but they didn't erase the doubt, because out there, in that gas station, in those streets, that good heart had just cost her everything. Before Lila could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Both of them froze. It wasn't a familiar sound, not a neighbor, not a friend. It was firm, deliberate. Lila stood slowly, her pulse quickening as she walked toward the door. Another knock, louder this time. She hesitated for a brief moment, then reached for the handle and pulled it open. Standing in the hallway was Mr. Darnell, and he didn't look calm. His face was tight, his jaw set, his eyes sharper than before. "What are you doing here?" Lila asked, confusion creeping into her voice. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he held up something in his hand. A small stack of bills. Lila's breath caught. "Thought you might want to explain this again," he said, his voice low but tense. "Because I just counted the drawer. Twice." Lila frowned. "I already told you." "No," he cut in, stepping closer. "You told me a story. What I need now is the truth." The hallway seemed to close in around them. Angela's voice called weakly from inside. "Lila? Who is it?" Lila didn't turn. She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the money in his hand. $7. Again. Always $7. "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice steady, even as her heart pounded harder. Mr. Darnell studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned in slightly, his voice dropping even lower. "Because from where I'm standing," he said, "this isn't just about missing cash anymore." A cold chill ran down her spine. "What are you talking about?" she asked. He held her gaze, and for the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not just suspicion, something sharper, something more deliberate. Maybe, he said slowly, you didn't just make a mistake last night. The words hung there, heavy, unfinished. And suddenly, the situation felt bigger than $7, bigger than a missing entry. Like something else was unfolding, just beneath the surface, something Lila didn't understand yet. And as she stood there, facing him in that narrow hallway, one terrifying thought began to take shape. Had she just been set up, or had this only just begun? The hallway felt colder now, not because of the flickering light above or the cracked window at the far end, but because something had shifted. Something unseen but unmistakable. Lila stood frozen in her doorway, her hand still gripping the edge of the door as Mr. Darnell's words settled into her bones. You need to come back, he said, straightening up. Now. There was no room for argument in his voice. No patience left. Just authority. Lila hesitated, her eyes flicking briefly toward the couch behind her. Her mother sat quietly, watching, her face pale but alert now. What's going on? Angela asked, her voice fragile but firm. Lila swallowed. I have to go back to the station, she said softly. Angela's eyes searched hers, reading what Lila wouldn't say out loud. This about your job? She asked. Lila forced a nod. Mr. Darnell didn't wait. We don't have all day, he muttered, already turning toward the stairs. Lila grabbed her coat again, her fingers trembling slightly, then stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind her. The click echoed louder than it should have, like something final. The walk back felt longer this time. The sky had turned a dull gray. The earlier rain now reduced to a cold mist that clung to everything. Skin, clothes, thoughts. Neither of them spoke. Mr. Darnell walked a few steps ahead, his pace brisk, his shoulders tight. Lila followed, her mind racing. Set up. The word kept repeating. But why? She wasn't important enough. Was she? When they reached the gas station, something was different. Before they even stepped inside, Lila could feel it. The air, the energy. People were gathered near the counter. Too many people. And they were watching. Waiting. The moment Lila stepped through the door, the low murmur of voices shifted. Heads turned, eyes locked onto her. Not curious this time. Judging. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow across the worn tile floor. The smell of burnt coffee and motor oil hung heavy in the air. Behind the counter stood Marcus, the assistant manager, and beside him, a uniformed security officer Lila had never seen before. Her stomach dropped. "What's this?" she asked quietly. Mr. Darnell stepped forward. "This," he said, gesturing toward the counter, "is where you explain yourself properly." Lila's pulse pounded in her ears. "I already told you." "And now you'll say it again," Marcus cut in, his tone sharper than usual. "In front of everyone." A few people near the snack aisle shifted, pretending to browse but not really hiding the fact that they were listening. Watching. Waiting. Lila felt her chest tighten. "This doesn't have to be like this," she said, her voice steady but low. Marcus let out a short laugh. "Funny. That's what people say when they're caught." The words landed hard. "I didn't take anything," Lila repeated, louder this time. The security officer stepped closer, his presence calm but firm. "Ma'am, we just need to clarify a few things," he said. Clarify. Such a soft word for something that felt like a public trial. Marcus reached under the counter and pulled out the register drawer, setting it down with a loud clack. $7 short, he said. Same as last night. Lila's eyes narrowed. That doesn't make any sense. Exactly, Marcus replied. So maybe you can help us understand it. Mr. Darnell crossed his arms, watching her closely. Every movement, every breath. Like he was waiting for her to slip, to break, to confess to something she hadn't done. I used my own money, Lila said, her voice rising slightly. I didn't take it from the register. I paid for that gas. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Someone scoffed. Sure you did, a man near the coffee machine muttered. Lila turned toward him instinctively, her cheeks burning. I did, she insisted. Marcus shook his head slowly, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Then explain this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled receipt. Lila's breath caught. It was from the night before. Pump 4. $7. But the payment method. Cash, Marcus said, from the register. Lila stared at it, her mind spinning. That's not possible, she whispered. But even as the words left her mouth, doubt crept in. Because somehow, the system said otherwise. The crowd grew quieter now, the earlier whispers replaced by something heavier. Judgment. Final. Unforgiving. She's lying, someone said under their breath. I knew it, another voice added. Lila felt the room closing in around her. The lights seemed harsher, the air thinner. Every eye on her felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. I didn't do this, she said again, but her voice sounded smaller now, less certain. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Then maybe, he said softly, you won't mind if we check the footage. Lila blinked. Yes, she said quickly. Do that. Please. For the first time, a flicker of hope cut through the panic. Because the truth was there. It had to be. Marcus straightened. Then his expression shifted. Just slightly. Yeah, he said. About that. He glanced toward Mr. Darnell, then back at Lila. The camera covering the register? He continued. A pause. Long enough to matter. It wasn't working last night. Silence. Complete. Absolute. Lila's heart dropped. No footage. No proof. Nothing. The last piece of hope slipped through her fingers like water, and in its place came something colder, something heavier, because now it wasn't just her word against theirs. It was her word against everyone. The security officer stepped closer again. Ma'am, he said gently, I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out. Step aside. Removed. Separated. Lila didn't move. Couldn't. Because in that moment, standing under those buzzing lights, surrounded by strangers who had already decided who she was, she realized something that hit deeper than the accusation itself. This wasn't just about $7. It wasn't just about a missing entry. It was about how quickly people were willing to believe the worst about someone like her. Her hands clenched at her sides. Her throat tightened. But she didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Instead, she took a slow breath and stepped back. Because right now, she had no choice. And as the whispers began again, louder this time, spreading like wildfire through the small store, Lila Brooks stood in the center of it all, silent and alone, while her name was quietly turned into something she didn't recognize anymore. A thief. The word didn't need to be spoken out loud anymore. It hung in the air anyway. In the way people looked at her. In the way they avoided her eyes now, as if even making contact might somehow pull them into the same trouble. The security officer guided her gently but firmly toward the side of the store. Not rough, not cruel, just distant, professional, like she was already a case, not a person. "We're going to need you to wait outside," he said quietly. Lila nodded, even though something inside her wanted to scream, not from anger, but from the crushing weight of being unheard, unseen. She stepped outside. The cold hit her immediately. The rain had picked up again, heavier now, falling in thin silver lines under the flickering gas station lights. The pavement shimmered with reflections of red brake lights and yellow neon. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing, trying to steady herself. Through the glass window, she could still see them. Marcus talking, Mr. Darnell pacing, the officer near the counter, her world, unraveling behind a pane of glass. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time felt strange now, slow and fast all at once. Finally, the door opened again. Mr. Darnell stepped out. He didn't look at her right away. Instead, he pulled his coat tighter, glanced down the street, then sighed. "You're suspended," he said flatly. The words landed harder than anything else that night. "Suspended?" Lila repeated. "Pending further investigation," he added, like he was reading from a script he'd used before. Lila shook her head slowly. "You know I didn't do this." Mr. Darnell finally looked at her. Really looked. And for just a second, there was something there. Doubt. Or maybe guilt. But it disappeared just as quickly. "What I know," he said carefully, "is what the system shows. And right now, it doesn't look good for you." Lila swallowed. "So that's it?" she asked. "After everything?" Mr. Darnell didn't answer. He didn't have to, because the silence said everything. Lila let out a small, shaky breath. Then she turned and walked away. No umbrella, no plan. Just the sound of rain hitting pavement and the distant hum of traffic guiding her steps through the dark streets of Detroit. By the time she reached her building, her clothes were soaked through, her shoes squished with every step. Her hands were numb. But none of it mattered, because the cold inside her chest was worse, much worse. She climbed the stairs slowly this time, each step heavier than the last. When she reached her door, she paused, just for a second, because once she walked in, she would have to face something she wasn't ready for. The truth. She pushed the door open quietly. The apartment was dim. Only the small lamp by the couch was on, casting a soft yellow glow across the room. Her mother was still awake, sitting up slightly now, wrapped in a thin blanket. "Lila?" Angela's voice was soft, careful. "You're late." Lila forced a small smile. "Busy night," she said. She stepped inside, closing the door gently behind her. Water dripped from her coat onto the floor. Angela's eyes moved over her, taking in the soaked clothes, the tired posture, the way she avoided looking directly at her. Something wasn't right. "Mama," Lila started, then stopped, because the words wouldn't come. How do you tell someone who's already fighting just to breathe that you just lost the one thing keeping you afloat? Angela studied her for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You lost the job," she said. It wasn't a question. Lila's throat tightened. It's not like that," she tried. But even she didn't believe it. Angela leaned back slightly, her eyes soft but steady. "What happened?" And this time, Lila couldn't hide it. She sank down onto the edge of the couch, her shoulders finally dropping under the weight she'd been carrying all night. "They think I stole," she whispered. The room fell silent. Angela didn't react right away. She just watched her daughter, carefully. "I didn't," Lila added quickly. "I swear, Mama, I didn't." "I know," Angela said without hesitation. "That's simple. That's certain." And somehow, that made it harder. Because in a world that had just turned against her, her mother still believed her, without question. Lila's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "I gave it away," she said. Angela frowned slightly. "Gave what away?" "The money," Lila replied. $7. My last $7. "For what?" Lila hesitated. Then she let out a breath. "There was a man," she said. "He needed gas. Everyone thought he was lying. But I don't know, she shook her head. "I believed him." Angela was quiet for a long moment, not judging, not interrupting, just listening. "And now?" she asked softly. Lila looked down at her hands. "They think I took it from the register," she said. "There's no proof I didn't." Another silence, heavier this time, because now they both understood what that meant. No job, no income, no way to pay for medicine, for rent, for anything. Angela leaned back slowly, her breathing shallow but controlled. "You did what you thought was right," she said. Lila let out a small, broken laugh. "Did I?" she asked. "Because it doesn't feel right." "It never does," Angela replied quietly. "Not at first." Lila looked up. "What if it never does?" she whispered. Angela didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out, placing her weak hand over Lila's. "You remember what I used to tell you?" she asked. Lila nodded faintly. "Kindness doesn't come back the way you expect." Angela smiled gently. "But it always comes back." Lila wanted to believe that. She really did. But sitting there, in a dim apartment with unpaid bills stacked on the table and the sound of rain tapping against the window like a clock counting down, it was hard. So hard. Because right now, kindness had taken everything she had left and given her nothing in return. That night, they didn't talk much more. Lila helped her mother lie back down, adjusted the blanket, and turned off the lamp. The room sank into darkness. Only the faint glow of streetlights slipped through the curtains, casting long shadows across the walls. Lila sat there for a while, listening to her mother's breathing, to the rain, to her own thoughts. And slowly, those thoughts turned into something quieter, something deeper. Not anger, not even sadness. Just doubt. Because for the first time in a long time, Lila Brooks wondered if the one thing she had always believed in had been wrong all along. And somewhere out in the city, far beyond the narrow streets and flickering lights, a man drove through the night in silence, carrying with him a memory he could not shake, the image of a girl who had given everything when she had nothing left to give, and by morning, everything would begin to change. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn. In its place, a cold stillness settled over the city, like Detroit itself was holding its breath. Lila barely slept. She had drifted in and out of shallow dreams, each one tangled with the same images. The register drawer, Marcus's smirk, the word thief echoing without sound. When the first light slipped through the thin curtains, pale and weak, she was already awake. Sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing. Her body felt heavy, her mind even heavier. Across the room, her mother was still asleep, her breathing uneven but steady. For a moment, Lila just watched her. Then she stood quietly, pulling on her coat again. The same one from last night. Still damp, still cold. Because she had nowhere else to go. "I'll be back," she whispered, though her mother didn't stir. She stepped outside. The air bit at her skin, sharp and unforgiving. The streets were quieter now, washed clean by the storm. Puddles reflected the pale sky, broken only by the occasional passing car. Lila walked slowly, not because she wanted to, but because she didn't know what waited at the end of the road. Hope or more humiliation? When the gas station came into view, her chest tightened. Everything looked the same. Same flickering sign, same cracked pavement, same worn-down building that had once felt like a lifeline. Now it felt like a place she didn't belong. She hesitated at the edge of the lot, then took a step forward, and another, because no matter what happened, she needed answers. As she got closer, something caught her eye. A black SUV, parked near Pump 4, engine off, windows tinted. Then another, and another. 3 in total, identical, out of place. Lila slowed. Her heartbeat quickened. This wasn't normal. Not here. Not at a place like this. The early morning light reflected off the polished surfaces of the vehicles, sharp and clean, so different from everything else around them. For a moment, Lila thought she had made a mistake. Wrong place. Wrong time. But then, the door of the first SUV opened. A man stepped out, tall, well-dressed, dark suit, perfectly pressed. He looked around briefly, his posture calm but alert. Then he reached back into the vehicle and opened the rear door. Another figure stepped out, and Lila's breath caught. It was him. The man from last night. But not the same. Not even close. Gone were the worn-out clothes, the tired posture, the quiet desperation in his eyes. Now, he stood straight, confident, dressed in a tailored suit that fit him like it had been made just for him. His hair was neatly combed, his shoes polished, his presence commanding. For a second, Lila wondered if she was imagining it, if exhaustion had finally blurred reality. But then he looked up, and their eyes met. Recognition flashed instantly, on both sides. The world seemed to pause. No cars passing, no sound of wind. Just that single moment stretched between them. The man took a step forward, then another. The other suited men followed, staying just behind him, not crowding, but close enough to matter. Lila's feet felt rooted to the ground. Her mind scrambled for explanations. None made sense. He stopped a few feet away from her, close enough that she could see it clearly now. The same eyes, but different. Sharper. Clearer. "Miss Brooks," he said. Her name. He knew her name. The words hit harder than anything else. "How?" she started, her voice barely above a whisper. He gave a small, calm smile. "I owe you an explanation," he said. Behind them, the gas station door opened. Marcus stepped out. He froze the second he saw the scene. The SUVs, the suits, the man standing in front of Lila. Confusion flickered across his face. Then unease. Mr. Darnell appeared behind him, his expression tightening almost immediately. "What's going on here?" he demanded. But no one answered him, because all attention had shifted to the man, the one who had been dismissed, ignored, judged, just hours ago, now standing at the center of everything. The man turned slightly, glancing toward the station, then back at Lila. My name, he said slowly, is Charles Whitmore. The name landed like a quiet explosion. Marcus blinked. Mr. Darnell stiffened. Even the air seemed to shift again. Because this wasn't just any name. It was one people recognized. From headlines, from news reports, from conversations about power and money that felt far removed from places like this. Lila felt her heart pound. You, she whispered. Charles nodded. Yes, he said simply. A long silence followed. Then he stepped closer. Not too close, just enough, last night, he continued, his voice steady. You gave me something no one else did. Lila swallowed. It was just $7, she said. Charles shook his head gently. No, he replied. It wasn't. He paused, letting the weight of that settle. It was trust. Behind them, Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Darnell's face had gone pale, because something was happening, something bigger than they had expected. Charles glanced briefly toward them, then back at Lila. And now, he said, it's my turn to return the favor. Lila's breath caught, not because she understood, but because she didn't. At all. And as the morning light grew brighter, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement, the story that had nearly destroyed her was about to turn into something no one there could have predicted. The silence that followed Charles Whitmore's words felt heavier than anything Lila had experienced the night before, because this time, everyone was listening. Marcus's throat moved as he swallowed, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. Mr. Darnell stood stiff beside him, his eyes darting between Charles, the SUVs, and Lila, as if trying to calculate how quickly things had slipped out of his control. Charles didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Let's go inside, he said calmly. It wasn't a request. The group moved together toward the entrance, the glass door swinging open with a soft chime that sounded strangely out of place against the tension in the air. Inside, everything felt smaller, tighter. The same counter, the same register, the same place where Lila had stood just hours ago, being judged. Now she stood again, but not alone. Charles walked to the counter and placed his hand lightly on its surface, his eyes scanning the space with quiet precision. This is where it happened, he said. Marcus forced a laugh, though it came out strained. Look, sir, I don't know what you think. Charles lifted a hand slightly, and Marcus stopped talking. Not because he wanted to, because something in that gesture made it impossible not to. I believe, Charles said evenly, that there has been a misunderstanding. Lila's chest tightened. A misunderstanding. Such a simple phrase, but it carried the weight of everything. Mr. Darnell stepped forward, trying to regain some authority. We've already reviewed the situation, he said. The register came up short. The system logged a cash transaction. And the cameras? Charles interrupted, his gaze shifting toward him. Mr. Darnell hesitated. They weren't working last night. Charles nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. I see. He turned slightly, and one of the men who had arrived with him stepped forward, a woman in a dark suit, carrying a slim black tablet. This is Ms. Carter, Charles said, my legal advisor. The woman gave a brief nod, then moved toward the back area behind the counter. Marcus shifted uneasily. Hey, she can't just go back there. She can, Charles replied calmly. Another silence, because once again, no one argued. Ms. Carter crouched near the system panel, her fingers moving quickly and confidently. She plugged in a small device, her eyes focused. What exactly are you looking for? Mr. Darnell asked, his voice quieter now. Ms. Carter didn't look up. Backup feeds, she said. Marcus frowned. There are no backups. I told you, the camera wasn't working. Ms. Carter paused. Then, slowly, she looked up at him. That's not entirely accurate, she said. Marcus blinked. What do you mean? She stood, holding up the tablet. Primary camera system may have been disabled, she continued, her voice precise. But this station is equipped with a secondary internal logging system. It records low-resolution snapshots every 30 seconds. The room went still. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator units seemed to fade. And unlike the main system, she added, this one wasn't turned off. Lila's heart began to race, because for the first time, there was something. Proof. Marcus shook his head quickly. That doesn't prove anything. Let's see, Ms. Carter replied. She tapped the screen, turned it, so everyone could see. The image wasn't clear, grainy, muted colors, but it was enough. A timestamp blinked in the corner. Late last night. The register, the counter. Lila recognized the moment instantly. There she was, standing at the register. The man, Charles, just outside near pump 4. The next frame, Lila stepping back, reaching into her pocket, placing something on the counter. Her money, her $7. Another frame. Lila turning away, helping another customer. And then movement. Marcus, stepping forward, opening the register, his hand moving quickly, too quickly, removing cash. $7. Then closing it. Another frame. Marcus walking away like nothing had happened. The room fell into a silence so complete it felt almost unreal. Lila couldn't breathe, not because she didn't understand, but because she finally did. Mr. Darnell's face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. Marcus stared at the screen, at first confused, then defensive, then something else. Fear. That's... He started. That's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Ms. Carter said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Charles didn't speak right away. He simply watched, letting the truth settle, letting it sink in, letting everyone feel it. Marcus's composure cracked. You don't understand, he said quickly. It's not... She was already... Already what? Charles asked quietly. Marcus froze, because there was no answer that would save him now. No explanation that could rewrite what everyone had just seen. Lila felt something shift inside her. A release. Not sudden, not explosive, but deep. Like a weight she hadn't realized how heavy it was, finally lifting. I told you, she whispered. No one responded. Because now, they all knew. Mr. Darnell ran a hand over his face, his voice barely steady. Marcus, what did you do? Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth had already spoken for him. The security officer stepped forward again, this time not toward Lila, but toward Marcus. Sir, he said calmly, I'm going to need you to come with me. Marcus backed up slightly. This is ridiculous, he muttered, though his voice had lost all strength. This doesn't prove anything. But no one believed him anymore, not after what they had seen. He glanced around, searching for support, for someone to defend him. But there was nothing. Only silence. Only judgment. The same judgment Lila had faced hours earlier. Only now, it had changed direction. As Marcus was escorted toward the door, his protests fading into the background, the tension in the room began to shift. From accusation to realization. from doubt to truth. Lila stood still, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something else, something unfamiliar. Relief. Charles turned toward her again, his expression softer now. "You were right," he said. 3 simple words, but they meant everything. Lila swallowed, because after everything that had happened, after every look, every whisper, every moment of doubt, those words felt like air after drowning. But even then, one question remained. Why? Why had he come back? Why had he done all this? And why had he chosen her? Because something told her. This wasn't just about proving she was innocent. This was only the beginning. The gas station felt different now. Not because anything had physically changed. The same flickering lights, the same worn tiles, the same hum of machines. But because the truth had rewritten everything inside it. Lila stood behind the counter again. But this time no one questioned her. No one whispered. No one looked at her like she didn't belong. Instead, there was something unfamiliar in the air. Respect. Quiet. Uncertain. Mr. Darnell cleared his throat, still visibly shaken. "Miss Brooks," he began, his voice lacking its usual authority, I owe you an apology." Lila didn't respond right away. She simply looked at him, not with anger, not even with bitterness, just distance. "You should have listened," she said softly. Mr. Darnell lowered his gaze. "You're right." The words came out heavy, like they cost him something, but not nearly as much as what she had lost. Charles watched the exchange silently, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped forward. "Apologies are important," he said calmly, "but they don't fix what's broken." Mr. Darnell stiffened slightly. "We'll make this right. I can assure you." "You will," Charles replied, "but not because you want to." The statement hung in the air, firm and unshakable. Then Charles turned to Lila. "And you," he said gently, "deserve more than an apology." Lila's heart tightened. There it was again. That feeling. That this moment wasn't normal. That something bigger was unfolding. "I don't understand," she admitted. Charles gave a small nod, as if he had expected that. "No," he said, "you don't." He glanced briefly around the station, at the shelves, at the customers who were now pretending not to listen, at the space where everything had happened. Then he looked back at her. "Last night," he said, "you made a choice." Lila swallowed. "It didn't feel like a choice," she replied. "It just felt like the right thing to do." Charles studied her carefully. "And that," he said, "is exactly why it mattered." A pause. Then he continued. "I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who only give when they expect something in return," he said. "Investors, partners, even family." His voice didn't carry anger, just truth. "Last month," he added, "someone I trusted betrayed me. Cost me more than money." Lila listened quietly, because now she was beginning to see it. This trip, Charles went on, wasn't business. It was something else. "A test?" Lila asked softly. Charles met her eyes. "Yes." The word settled between them. Simple, but heavy. "I needed to know," he continued, "if people still knew how to care, without conditions." Lila looked down briefly, then back up. "And I passed?" she asked. Charles didn't smile, not right away. Instead, he stepped a little closer. "You didn't just pass," he said. You were the only one who did. The room went still again, because that meant something, something bigger than any of them had realized. I stopped at 5 different places before this one, Charles said. 5. He let the number linger. Every single person I asked turned me away. Lila felt a quiet ache in her chest. Not for herself, but for that version of him, the one she had seen the night before. Tired, ignored, invisible. I didn't look like someone worth helping, he said. And that was the point. A faint silence followed. Then, you gave me everything you had, he said. Lila shook her head gently. It wasn't everything, she said. It was just $7. Charles exhaled slowly. No, he said. It was everything that mattered. Those words landed differently, deeper, because for the first time, someone understood what that $7 really meant. Behind them, Mr. Darnell shifted again. So, what are you saying? He asked, his voice cautious. Charles didn't look at him. I'm saying, he replied, that character reveals itself in the smallest moments. Then he finally turned. And last night, this station failed that test. The statement hit harder than any accusation. Because it wasn't loud. It was certain. Mr. Darnell had no response. Because there wasn't one. Charles turned back to Lila. And now, he said, his tone softening slightly, we have another decision to make. Lila frowned. We? She asked. Charles nodded. Yes. A subtle shift in the air. Because this was no longer about the past. This was about what came next. I came back today, Charles said. Not just to clear your name. He paused, long enough for the weight of that to settle. But to offer you something. Lila's breath caught. An offer. The word felt dangerous, unfamiliar. Because nothing in her life had ever come without a cost. What kind of offer? She asked carefully. Charles studied her for a moment, as if measuring something, not her worth, but her readiness. An opportunity, he said. Lila didn't answer. Not yet. Because something inside her hesitated, not from fear of him, but from everything she had just been through, because kindness had just cost her everything, and now something was being offered in return. Too fast, too sudden, too perfect. What if I don't want it? She asked quietly. The question surprised everyone, even Mr. Darnell, even the people listening from across the store. But not Charles. He didn't react with shock or offense. Instead, he gave a small, approving nod. Then you say no, he replied simply. Lila blinked. That's it? That's it. Another pause. Then he added, but you should hear it first. Lila looked at him. Really looked. Trying to understand. Trying to decide if this was real or just another version of something that could disappear. And in that moment, she realized something important. This wasn't about money or status or even opportunity. This was another test, not his, but hers. Because now, the question wasn't whether she would give, it was whether she would accept. And that was something she had never learned how to do, not in a world where everything always came with a hidden cost, not in a life where trust had always been something fragile. So she stood there, silent, thinking. While the morning light grew stronger outside, just one answer away. The station felt quieter than it had all morning. Even the hum of the refrigerators seemed softer now, like the world itself was waiting to hear what she would say. Lila drew in a slow breath. "I'm listening," she said. Charles gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging something more than just her words. "Good," he replied. He stepped back slightly, giving her space, not crowding her, not pressuring her. That alone felt different. Most people, when they offered something, wanted an answer immediately. They wanted control. But Charles didn't rush her. "My company runs several community outreach programs," he began. "Education, job training, housing support." Lila's eyes flickered with cautious interest. Programs like that, they were always talked about, promised, rarely seen. "I'm expanding one of them here in Detroit," he continued. "A new initiative focused on helping people who've been overlooked." He paused briefly, then added, "People like you." The words weren't insulting. They were honest, and that made them heavier. "What does that have to do with me?" Lila asked. Charles studied her carefully. "Everything," he said. He gestured slightly toward the counter. "You understand something most people don't," he explained. "What it means to give when it costs you. What it means to stand alone when no one believes you." Lila felt a quiet tension in her chest, because he was right. But hearing it out loud made it real. "I need someone like that," Charles said. "Someone who doesn't just talk about compassion, but lives it." Mr. Darnell shifted behind them, clearly unsure whether he should still be there at all. Lila didn't look at him. Her focus stayed on Charles. "What are you asking me to do?" she said. Charles didn't hesitate. "Work with us," he replied. "Learn, grow, help build something that actually reaches people who need it." The words hung in the air. Simple, but powerful. Lila blinked. "You're offering me a job?" she asked. "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "A real position," he added, "with training, support, a path forward." Lila let out a small breath, because it sounded too good, too clean, too easy. "And my mom?" she asked suddenly. Charles didn't miss a beat. "She'll receive full medical support," he said. "Immediate care. No delays." Lila's heart skipped. That was the part that hit hardest. Not the job, not the opportunity, but that. Because for weeks, months, she had been watching her mother get weaker, knowing there was nothing she could do. And now, suddenly, there was. The silence stretched. Heavy. Fragile. "Why?" Lila asked quietly. Not suspicious. Just needing to understand. Charles didn't answer right away. He took a slow breath, then spoke. "Because I've seen what happens when good people are left behind," he said, "and I'm tired of building things that only benefit those who are already ahead." His voice carried something deeper now, something personal. "I lost sight of that for a long time," he admitted. "Last night reminded me." Lila searched his face, trying to see if there was anything hidden there, any sign that this was just another kind of transaction, another version of something she couldn't trust. But she didn't see it. What she saw was sincerity, and that scared her more than anything, because sincerity meant she could believe it, and believing it meant risking something again. "I don't want charity," she said finally. Charles nodded. "I wouldn't offer it to you," he replied. Another silence. Then Lila shook her head slightly. "You don't understand," she said. "Everything I've ever been given, it always came with something attached." Her voice wasn't bitter. just honest. So what's the catch? She asked. Charles held her gaze. There isn't one. Lila almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. There's always something, she said. Charles tilted his head slightly. You're right, he said. That caught her off guard. There is, he continued. It just isn't what you think. Lila waited, her pulse steady but alert. The catch, Charles said, is that this won't be easy. He stepped closer again, just enough to make sure she understood. You'll have to work harder than you ever have, he said. You'll be in rooms where people don't expect you. You'll face the same doubts, the same judgments, just at a different level. Lila's chest tightened slightly, because that part, she believed. And you won't be able to walk away the moment it gets difficult, he added. The words landed differently, because they weren't a trap. They were a challenge. This isn't about saving you, Charles said quietly. It's about giving you a chance to build something of your own. Lila looked down at her hands, then back up. Because now this felt real, not a handout, not a shortcut. A door, one she could walk through, or not. And if I say no, she asked again. Charles gave a small shrug. Then you go back to your life, he said, and I respect that. Lila exhaled slowly. Her mind raced. Her heart pulled in two directions. One side, fear. Because everything in her life had taught her not to trust sudden change. The other, hope. Because this could be more than just survival. It could be something different, something better. She thought of her mother, of the dim apartment, of the nights spent counting coins, of the way people had looked at her just hours ago. And then she thought of something else. The moment she had placed those $7 on the counter. She hadn't hesitated then. She hadn't calculated. She had just acted. Because it felt right. Lila lifted her head, met Charles's eyes. I'll accept the job, she said. A quiet shift passed through the room. But before anyone could react, she added, on one condition. Charles's expression didn't change. Name it. Lila took a breath. I earn it, she said. No special treatment. No shortcuts. Her voice was steady now, stronger. If I'm going to do this, I do it the right way. A long pause followed. Then, for the first time, Charles smiled. Not politely, not professionally, genuinely. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said. Something inside Lila settled. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just reacting to life. She was choosing it. And as the morning light poured through the windows, brighter now, warmer, the girl who had been standing alone just hours ago took her first step into something entirely new. But even then, a quiet question lingered beneath it all. Was this truly the beginning of something better, or just the start of a challenge she wasn't ready for yet? The question stayed with her long after she left the gas station. It followed her through the streets, past the cracked sidewalks and quiet storefronts, through the cold morning air that still carried the scent of last night's rain. Nothing around her had changed. The same city, the same noise, the same weight of life pressing in from every direction. And yet, everything felt different. Because for the first time, something had shifted inside her. Not just hope. Something stronger. Choice. When Lila pushed open the door to her apartment, the familiar creak echoed softly through the small space. Her mother was awake, sitting up slightly, as if she had been waiting. You're back, Angela said gently. Lila nodded, but she didn't speak right away. She stepped inside, closed the door, and stood there for a moment, her hand still resting on the knob. Because she didn't know how to explain something like this. How do you put something so big into words, when your whole life has only ever been small? What happened? Angela asked. Lila walked slowly to the couch and sat down beside her. There was a mistake, she said first. At work. Angela studied her face. And now? Lila let out a breath. They know the truth, she said. I didn't steal anything. A quiet relief passed through the room. Angela closed her eyes briefly, as if releasing something she had been holding onto. I told you, she whispered. I knew you didn't. Lila smiled faintly. But it didn't last. Someone set me up, she added. They caught it on another camera. Angela frowned slightly, but before she could ask more, there's more, Lila said. And this time, her voice carried something different. Uncertainty. There was a man, she continued. The one I helped last night. Angela nodded slowly. The one you gave the money to? Yes. Lila hesitated, then said it. He came back. Angela's eyes widened slightly. And? Lila looked down at her hands. He's not who I thought he was, she said. A pause. Then, he's a billionaire. The word sounded strange in the room, out of place, like it didn't belong there. Angela blinked, trying to process it. Billionaire? She repeated. Lila nodded. And he offered me a job. Silence. Not disbelief, not excitement. Just silence. Because both of them knew nothing in their lives had ever been simple. What kind of job? Angela asked carefully. Lila looked up. He wants me to work with one of his programs, helping people like us. Angela leaned back slightly, absorbing that. And you? She asked. What did you say? Lila didn't answer right away, because this was the part that mattered most. I said yes, she said finally. Angela's eyes searched hers, but Lila wasn't finished. On my terms, she added. A small shift in the room, because that part was new. I'm not taking handouts, Lila said. I'm not letting anyone think I'm only here because someone felt sorry for me. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. I'm going to earn it. Angela watched her quietly. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not a big smile, not dramatic, but real. That's my girl, she said softly. Something inside Lila settled at those words, because for the first time, this didn't feel like something being given to her. It felt like something she was stepping into, even if it scared her. Later that day, everything moved quickly, faster than Lila was used to. A car arrived, not one of the black SUVs from before, but something simpler. Still clean, still new, still a reminder that her world was shifting. When she stepped outside, she hesitated. Just for a moment, because leaving that apartment felt like leaving behind the only version of life she had ever known. But then she thought of something her mother had said years ago. You can't grow if you stay where you're comfortable. Lila opened the car door and got in. The ride across the city felt surreal. The streets changed gradually, from worn buildings to cleaner blocks, from quiet corners to busy intersections, from survival to possibility. When they reached the building, Lila's breath caught. It wasn't just big, it was different. Glass and steel stretching upward, reflecting the sky like it belonged to another world. Inside, everything was brighter, cleaner, quieter. People moved with purpose, their footsteps soft against polished floors. And for a moment, Lila felt it again. That old feeling. That she didn't belong. That she was out of place. That at any moment someone would look at her and see through everything. But then she remembered why she was there. Not because of luck. Not because of charity. But because of a choice she had made. $7. Everything she had. Given without hesitation. She straightened her shoulders slightly, lifted her head, and walked forward. Charles was waiting, standing near a glass wall that overlooked the city. When he saw her, he nodded once. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Lila replied. He studied her for a moment, not judging, just observing. "Good," he said. He gestured toward the space around them. "This is where it starts." Lila looked around, at the people, at the movement, at the world she had just stepped into, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt ready. Not because she knew everything, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she had already faced something harder. Being misunderstood, being judged, being alone. And she had made it through. Charles stepped beside her. "Most people who walk in here think this is where success begins," he said quietly. Lila glanced at him. "And you don't?" He shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "It begins long before that." He looked at her, usually, when no one is watching. Lila held his gaze, because now she understood. The real moment that changed everything wasn't this one. It was the night before. Under flickering lights, with rain falling, and a choice that no one else would have made. And as she stood there, looking out over a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities, Lila Brooks realized something she had never believed before. Her life hadn't changed because someone powerful had noticed her. It had changed because she had never stopped being herself. And that was something no one could ever take away. But even then, the story wasn't over, because the impact of one small act was still unfolding. 5 years later, Detroit looked different to Lila Brooks. Or maybe she had changed the way she saw it. The streets were still there. Cracked sidewalks, corner stores with flickering lights, buses sighing to a stop in the early morning cold. The city hadn't become perfect, but something inside it had shifted. Quietly, steadily, like a ripple that never stopped moving. Lila stood at the edge of a gas station lot. Not the same one from years ago, but one that looked almost identical. Old pumps, faded paint, a small convenience store glowing under warm yellow light. She pulled her coat tighter as a soft breeze moved through the air. In her hand, she held a small envelope. Inside it, $7. She looked at it for a moment, then smiled. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. Behind her, a sleek but modest car waited, engine running quietly. No long line of black SUVs this time. No crowd, no attention. She had made sure of that. Because this wasn't about being seen. It never had been. "Miss Brooks?" A voice called gently from behind her. She turned. A young man stood near the pump, his expression hesitant. He looked tired, worried, his clothes worn but clean. "Yeah?" Lila said. I'm sorry to bother you," he said. I'm a few dollars short. I need to get across town. My sister, she's in the hospital." He stopped, clearly embarrassed. "I'll pay it back," he added quickly. I don't have enough right now." For a moment, everything slowed. The sounds of the city faded. The lights softened, and Lila saw it again. Not just him, but the memory. Rain falling, cold air. A man standing in almost the exact same place, asking for help, being turned away. Except this time, she wasn't behind the counter. She wasn't the one with nothing. She was the one being asked. The ripple had come full circle. Lila stepped forward. "How much do you need?" she asked. $7, he said quietly. She nodded. Of course. $7. She reached into the envelope and pulled out the cash, holding it for a brief second before handing it to him. His eyes widened slightly. "Thank you," he said. "I mean it." Lila smiled. "I know," she replied. He hesitated. "You sure?" he asked. "I can take your number. I'll send it back." "You don't have to," she said gently. "But just help someone else when you can." The words felt familiar, because once someone had said something like that to her. The young man nodded slowly. Then, after one last grateful look, he turned and walked toward the pump. Lila watched him for a moment, then turned back toward her car. As she approached, the driver stepped out and opened the door for her. "Everything okay, Ms. Brooks?" he asked. Lila nodded. "Yeah," she said softly. She got in, settling into the seat as the door closed behind her. The car pulled away smoothly, merging into the quiet flow of morning traffic. As the city passed by outside the window, Lila leaned back slightly, her gaze drifting across familiar streets that no longer felt quite the same. 5 years. In that time, everything had changed. Her mother was healthy now, stronger than she had been in years. The apartment they once struggled to keep had been replaced by a small but comfortable home filled with light and warmth. And Lila had grown into something she had never imagined. She had started at the bottom, learning, listening, making mistakes, working harder than she ever had before, and slowly earning her place. Now she led one of the largest outreach programs in the city, a program built on something simple, something most people overlooked. Small acts, small moments, small choices. Gas money for someone stranded, groceries for a struggling family, bus fare for someone trying to make it to a job interview. Nothing big, nothing flashy, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to change something. Because she had learned something that no classroom, no office, no title could ever teach her. That kindness wasn't about how much you gave. It was about what it cost you to give it. And sometimes, the smallest amount meant the most. The car slowed as it reached a red light. Lila glanced out the window. Across the street, she saw a young girl helping an older woman carry groceries. No cameras. No attention. Just a simple moment. She smiled again. Because the ripple was still moving, still spreading, in ways no one could measure, in places no one expected. And maybe that was the point. Not to control it, not to own it, just to start it. The light turned green. The car moved forward. And as the city opened up ahead of her, full of noise, struggle, hope, and possibility, Lila Brooks closed her eyes for a brief second and remembered the night everything began. $7. A stranger. A choice. And the moment she decided to give, when she had nothing left. Because in the end, that was what changed everything. Not the money, not the opportunity, not even the man who came back the next day, but the decision to believe, to care, to act, even when no one else would. And somewhere, in another part of the city, another story was beginning. Another moment, another choice, another ripple. Waiting for someone brave enough to start it. Because once, on a cold Detroit night, Lila Brooks handed over her last $7 and never asked for anything in return. And years later, she stood in that same moment again. Only this time, she became the reason someone else didn't lose hope. This story reminds us that real strength isn't in what you say, it's in what you choose to do when it costs you something. Lila didn't change her life with words. She changed it with one quiet, selfless action. So the next time you see someone struggling, don't overthink it. Just do something small. Even something as simple as what Lila did might be the moment that changes everything for someone, or even for you. Have you ever helped someone and never found out what happened next? Tell me in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, there's another one waiting, just ahead.